April 1st, 2014 County Commission meeting to order. We'll stand for a moment of silent reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Holloway.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next order of business is the oaths of office for the County Board of Equalization. Judge Davis, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning. You get you sworn in whether you need it or not.
We need it.
It's that long, cumbersome one.
We're used to get sworn out, I don't know about sworn in.
Since it is long, it's probably easier if you just remain seated, but I'd have you raise your right hands, say "I," state your name, and then repeat after me.
Danell Peterson.
I,
I, Don Holloway,
a member of the Board of Equalization,
Member of the Board of Equalization,
within and for the County of Pennington,
in and for the County of Pennington,
State of South Dakota,
State of South Dakota,
for the year 2014,
for the year 2014,
being first duly sworn,
being first duly sworn,
depose and say
dispose and say
that I will fairly and impartially
that I will fairly and impartially
perform the duties as a member
perform the duties as a member
of the Board of Equalization
of the Board of Equalization
for the county and state,
for the county and state,
that I will endeavor
that I will endeavor
to equalize the assessment
to equalize the assessment
of all real property within the county,
of all real property within the county,
that I will seek to place
that I will seek to place
on the books of the tax jurisdiction
upon the books of the tax jurisdiction
within the county
within the county
any property
any property
may have been omitted
that may have been omitted
by error or neglect
by error or neglect
of the assessor or Board of Equalization.
of the assessor or Board of Equalization.
I will faithfully and impartially
I will faithfully and impartially
perform all the other acts
perform all the other acts
enjoined on me by law,
enjoined on me by law,
and to the end
and to the end
that all assessments within the county
that all assessments within the
may
county
be complete and just,
may be complete and just,
equal as between the property holders.
as equals between the property holders.
Very good.
Thanks.
Where do you pick up those Carmel Road, Judge?
That was not my fault.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could inform the chairman just where you get those good roads.
Well, I looked at the chairman and thought, no, that'd be a bad idea. I'm going to leave it alone.
That's a good idea to check them.
All set?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next item of business is to review and approve the agenda. Does anyone have any changes they wish to make to the agenda? If not, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the consent agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Hennies, Commission Office Manager. For public notice, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the Board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today, the consent agenda contains the following items. Number 6 is approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of March 18th, 2014, with a motion language correction as requested by the Auditor's Office. Number 7 is approval of the vouchers in the amount of $128,738.10. And number 8 is to acknowledge the order for organization and incorporation of the Trailwood Village Road District as submitted by the Auditor's Office.
Does anyone wish any of the items removed from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would like to pull item 7, approval of the vouchers.
Are there any other requests? If not, item 7 is removed, and we have items 6 and 8. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve items 6 and 8 on the consent. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 7.
Mr. Chair, I just ran into an item on the voucher list. It says Hart Ranch Camping Resort Club Incorporated, $307.64. And Holly pulled some information for me. And it looks like that we have somebody that has a membership in the Hart Ranch. And it says member number 13-160 here on this paper. And it looks like this person has a camper and has a membership at Hart Ranch and has parked at the Hart Ranch. And we're paying for their electricity and propane and shop labor, whatever that is, I don't know, with a total bill of $307.64. So I have a question about that, and I guess I know Karen isn't here today, but I wonder what we're doing paying that when they got money enough to buy a camper and pay their membership at Hart Ranch.
KJ Peterson, Chief Deputy Auditor. I will have to just check down with Cindy in Accounts Payable, and we can pull that voucher, see which department it's coming from and what the details of it are. So I don't know if you just want to give me a few minutes and move on, or whatever the board's desire.
What's the wish of the commission?
Do you think it'd mess up anything if we held this over till the next meeting and go ahead and pay the rest of the vouchers?
We can certainly do that. We can get you more details on it.
Right.
So do we have a motion?
That's a motion I would make, that we approve the balance of the vouchers less the voucher request from Hart Ranch for $307.64.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Does everyone understand the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is item 9, the 2013 Build South Dakota Award for the Plateau Lane reconstruction. And Heine, do you have anyone else from the department here?
Yes, I have Wes Cheddar, project engineer. He also was the design engineer. He designed the storm sewer, the curb and gutter, sidewalks. He put the plans together, and Bill helped him a little bit, but it was mainly Wes's project, and it was very unique because we had 4 or 5 dead-end streets.
Yeah, 5.
And we had to maintain traffic, and Wes also did the traffic control plan, so Mainline Contractors was the contractor, and they submitted this on behalf of them in Pennington County, and we received that award for Category 2, projects between $500,000 and $2 million, and it was for outstanding highway heavy utility construction performed on the reconstruction of Plateau Lane in Rapid Valley. So Wes did most of the hard work. All I had to do was go out and negotiate with the landowners to get the right of way, and he helped on that too. So we're very proud to receive this award, and I wanted to make sure the commissioners were aware of it and that Wes gets recognized. Wes, you got any comments?
No, I'm just fortunate to be part of it and happy to be part of it, so.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Next item is item 10, a lien release request. I'm going to call on Jay Alderman to introduce the subject.
Morning, Commissioners. Jay Alderman with the State's Attorney's Office. I had an opportunity to review the lien release request that's before you this morning, and it involves a couple separate different cases from 2012 and 2011, I guess also 2010. The total amount of the Pennington County lien is, if you have it in front of you, is $992.20. The comments I'd like to make today is at the top of the lien, you'll see an amount for $246, and then below that a little bit you'll see an amount of $287. Those together total $533. That particular case, there's a statute, 26-7A-32, that says if the person who's subject of the case is, if there's not an adjudication, then there's no lien that you can create or file. And that, with the research our office did, that is the case for those two dollar amounts that total $533. So in that particular case, there was no adjudication, and so there is no lien. We can't create one, nor can we file one. So it'd be my recommendation today to release the $533 that I'm referring to. With regard to the remainder of that lien, $8.20, $131.20, $69.70, and $250.10. Those total $459.20. There's nothing wrong with those liens. They should remain of record unless, of course, you choose to exercise any authority to compromise them, release them, or whatever. But that makes up the balance. So I'm recommending release of $533. Keep the $459.20. Those two are what add up to the $992.20.
Any questions by the commission?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Jay, do you know, is the wife involved in this? Does she have a lien against her also?
In
Or
one
just him?
of the cases, she was, and I confirmed this morning that with the auditor's office, I had the same question, and yes, she does. She also has some liens against her for one of those cases that she was involved with.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that the liens in A&N case 11-0580, the first two that our state's attorney mentioned, be, I guess, released against whoever we have the lien against.
And do we need to, does that, I'll second that.
Okay.
Jay, do we need to have in that motion to remove these from our records? I mean, we don't want the lien to maintain. We don't want to just take it away from this individual. We don't want it to be on our books at all, right?
Yes, and I believe the Register of Deeds will do a notation in there that the lien is gone in the record as well.
Do we need to have that part of the motion?
Go ahead. I mean, that would be, sure. I don't think we've always done that, but it would be helpful.
Okay, let's clarify what we are putting in the motion.
Well, that the lien for that case is, I shouldn't say the lien is released because evidently there isn't a lien, but let's take the notation off of the individuals that are listed as alleged lien holders.
And I would add in there to release the lien, because even though it has to be released, it is there. So we want to release it from the record and note that in the Register of Deeds office too.
And you're talking about the $532
From A&N case 11-0580 for $533. that's what Commissioner Busgrove was suggesting.
Do you want it purged from the record? Hi, I'm Donna Meyer, Register of Deeds. Mr. Chairman, would you like to have the record purged from our records?
I don't know, are we going to need it sometime for future reference on something? Otherwise, you would, make a notation beside it that this is not a lien and not enforceable? I would prefer that, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now, before we vote on the motion, is there anyone else who wishes to testify regarding this issue?
Is the one that you were talking about releasing the earlier case involving the mother?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
No.
Oh, okay, the one that the mother was involved with?
Yeah, we haven't got to that one yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so are we clear? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now we're to the second part.
Just so we can talk about it, I'll make a motion to not release the liens on 10-00570.
Second.
Motion and a second. Now we're open for discussion.
The one involving the mother, we were never married, and I didn't even know that she was my daughter at the time, but I thought if she was, I had to get her into protection. I was the one that brought her mother here and got a hold of, told the hospital that it wasn't safe for her to go home. I was the one trying to protect my daughter, and so when I got these charges, I was surprised. I didn't know why they would have been put on me. And then later on in dealing with this, I found out that I was the father.
Okay, any questions by the commission?
Mr. Chair. So what we have done in the past is that we have removed the existing amount from the collection efforts of the Collection Bureau, and then you're not consistently contacted to pay it. But what we're hoping is that you would pay when you can. You're now very aware, and it is now $459.20, and that you could go to the auditor's office and pay when you have $20, you know.
Yeah, it's just hard because I'm a full-time student.
I get
and
that.
I have no one helping me raise my daughter right now, so.
And
Yeah.
we understand that, that's why I'm saying,
Yeah.
we have people paying $10, whatever, when they
Okay.
can.
So, so I'm responsible even though it was the mother's issue?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Jay, you have custody of your daughter?
Yes, I have full custody.
Is the mother around here at
No,
all?
I have a protection order against her.
Does she live in
I don't know
Rapid?
where she is.
You don't-
If I may, on the case now that we're talking about, attorneys were appointed for both parents and the child. And as a parent, an attorney can be appointed to you, which that did happen in this case. And the parents are jointly and severally liable, and the lien is against any property, both personal and real. So I don't know what to tell you other than the lien itself is valid.
Okay, and that's for my daughter's attorney.
And the parents are responsible for jointly and several for all attorneys. One for yourself, one for your.
I hired my own attorney.
Yeah. And for the child. So
Okay.
the parents are responsible for all of it. You don't lien against the child. You lien against the
Obviously, yes.
parents for any attorney's fees that are appointed in that case. So,
Okay, any further discussion? Not, we do have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Okay, next item is item 11, fiscal year 2015 budget valuation presentation.
Morning, Commissioner. Shannon Rittberger, Director of Equalization. I'm going to talk about the 2014 property assessment. I need to start this by saying, keep in mind that this is assessed values, not taxable values. Even though on the agenda it says budget, the county auditor will present taxable values that you will use for budgeting purposes. This is assessed values. This is my world. They're two different things. All right. Our 2014 assessed value, excluding registered mobile homes, which is a few million, is just over $8.5 billion. This is what the total assessment is for the county. All of the taxable property in the county is assessed at just over $8.5 billion. We had an increase of over $250 million in new property that was added to the tax roll this year, which is just over 3% increase. That increase, and I wanted to stress this, is between 0.5% and 1% more than each of the last several years. So that new growth amount, that $251 million, is an increase of 3%. And that 3% is more than we've had for the last several years, more than any year since I've been here. This is a quote from the Rapid City Journal. It comes from February 9th of this year. While the rest of the country continues to suffer through a lingering recession that ravaged residential real estate, Rapid City home sales are going full bore. More houses were sold at higher prices in less time in 2013 than any of the previous 5 years, according to statistics from the Black Hills Association of Realtors. This is the information that was a source of that article. The local multiple listing service provides the information in this graph, indicating that the average sale price of property has increased each of the previous 3 years. Here is 2013. The average property sold through the MLS in 2013 sold for just over $199,000. And that's an increase of 5.5%, and it's a bigger increase than we've seen in quite a few years. The number of properties sold also increased significantly last year. State law requires that all non-ag property be assessed at full market value. A sales ratio analysis is the accuracy test for that mass appraisal, and a mass appraisal is what my office does. Our ratio analysis looked at over 1,700 sales of all types of non-ag property that sold in 2013. Prior to any of the changes we did for the 2014 assessment, our median level of assessment was almost 93%. The median property, based on those 1,700 sales, was assessed at almost 93% of sale price. Now, the average property deviated from that median by plus or minus 12%, and that's a coefficient of dispersion, or COD. After we made changes for the 2014 assessment, the notices we just mailed, our median level of assessment went up to 97.6. And that spread, plus or minus from the median, was reduced down to 8.8. The industry standard for that COD is, according to the International Association of Assessing Officers, is a COD of between 5 and 20%. State law requires that we be 25% or less. At 8.8, we're well within any of the parameters established by law or industry. 8.8 COD is very good. I've created a graph here to show you what this means. Before we changed our values from last year to this year, our median property was assessed at 92%, almost 93, with a spread of something like 81 to 104. When we made changes for the 2014 assessment, you can see that the median increased up here to this, but then we shrunk that down. Now, you can see that the biggest change is the properties that fell right in here. Those were increased in assessment. So we increased the median level of assessment, and we shrunk the spread there. This is a good representation of why not every property changes the same percentage every year. We brought these up into this area up in here in blue.
I got a question. So, what, the percent of market value level of assessment, 106 or whatever it is right now, means that some properties are assessed at 106% of their market value.
That's right.
And isn't that against the state law? Doesn't the state law say you cannot assess property more than its value?
That's right.
So why are we doing that?
Because we're doing mass appraisal. Two things happen when we're doing mass appraisal. One, we're in an imperfect real estate market. Some people pay a higher price than others. Some people pay a lower price. So our houses that are worth $100,000 don't always sell for $100,000. Some of them sell for $105,000. Some of them sell for $95,000. We don't know everything about all of those houses that sell. Some houses are in worse condition than we think. And if nobody tells us, we have them overassessed. That's why we have the appeal process. There's information we don't know about houses. We assume a basement's finished and it's not, things like that. When we're doing mass appraisal, we can't be right. We will always have something up here unless we do something to drastically shift this down, and then we'll have stuff down here at 50%. But there'll always be that odd property we miss.
So Shannon, what you're really saying is that you cannot possibly go to each house and appraise it individually. You have to,
I could possibly do that, but I couldn't.
but not with what you have.
It is not feasible, that's right. Yep. The law requires that we be at market value, but the law also requires that we look at a median.
Mr. Chair. Yes. Shannon, how do we go to the public that's overassessed by 6%? Maybe even 25 or 30, 40%, depending on the condition of their house. But how do we go to those folks and explain to them what we've done to them when it comes to taxes by overassessing their property? Now, there's lots of people out there working for a living every day that don't have time to come to our foolishness and assessment and equalization hearings. So how do we explain that to them? I guess explain it to the news media and get people to understand it.
We send them an assessment notice, tells them what their property is assessed at.
Yeah.
Now, we have made it very easy for somebody to appeal their property assessment. The law requires that there be written notice. Pennington County takes an email, and we will come out and look at your property, and we'll talk to you about what the data we have on it and what other properties are selling for.
That still doesn't offer the information to the people that can't get in here and don't have time for our stuff. How do we go about fixing overassessment?
We also have all the assessment information. Everything we know about your property is available online. People can look at it year-round.
But again, how do we explain to them what we've done to them?
We send them an assessment notice.
That's a real neat deal to send them a piece of paper and say, we're overtaxing you.
What does the state law require for median level of assessment? Where do they want you to be at?
The law requires that all property be assessed at 100% of market value, but then the law says at least 85%.
So we weren't too bad off at 92%.
7%.
That depends. At 92%, yeah, we weren't too bad, and if your property is right here, you're not too bad. If your property is up here, that's not very fair when a bunch of the property is down there. That's why we like to, because we're required by law to get as close to 100% as possible, but also shrink that spread down.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Shannon, the reappraisal dollar amount that come up 1.69% or 137 million, that's because of this moving up from 104 to 106 and moving your median from 92 to 97. Is that correct?
Generally, yes.
That's where all that money came from?
New growth is new property that's added to the tax roll that wasn't there before. Reappraisal is any change for any reason other than new growth. And yeah, generally what you just said. Okay, our factor. The South Dakota Department of Revenue audits our assessment every year. They use a sales ratio analysis and they use it to determine the annual taxable factor. Assessed value is multiplied by a taxable factor to calculate taxable value, which is a percentage of assessed value. The factor changes every year depending upon the audit of our assessed values and changes in the current market. The closer our level of assessment is to 100% of market value, the closer our taxable percentage will be to 85. The state requires that we be at least at 85%. They're going to give us a factor to put our taxable value at 85%. If our level of assessment was less than 85, then our taxable factor would be over 100% to bring it up to 85. My estimate of our taxable factor for 2014 is approximately 86%. That's about what it was last year. And I'll have a graph here at the end that gives you a history of what our factor was. But going into ag values, the ag land assessment in Pennington County is approximately 3% of the total assessment, but it's a part that generates a lot of questions. Everyone should know that ag land is assessed using a productivity formula which considers crop productions, crop prices, rental rates, and soil ratings. Based upon that formula, the Department of Revenue provides each county with ag land values. The values given to us by the state are values for crop-rated soils and range-rated soils. Most parcels are a mixture of crop and range-rated soils. Assessed values are based upon the soil ratings of each particular parcel and not on the actual use of the land. The legislature's considered bills each of the previous 3 years, including this last year, to change to an actual use situation. That bill failed this year, it's failed in the previous years. I expect that there be continued talk at the legislature, and I sort of expect that we be headed in that direction, but I've thought that for a couple of years and it hasn't happened. When the productivity assessment process was implemented, the legislature recognized that assessed values in most counties would increase significantly, so they limited annual increases to 10% per year for 7 years. Then crop prices increased significantly and productivity values increased correspondingly. So the legislature amended that statute by increasing the limit up to a 20% per year increase and extended the duration of those limits for another 2 years until 2019.
I think it says 25 on your sheet.
Didn't I say 25?
No, you said 20.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading the same thing you are. 25. Pennington County, typical for most counties, is experiencing significant increases in ag land assessments in attempt to reach that productivity number, at least with respect to the crop-rated soil value. Our values on range-rated soils have reached that limit and stabilized, while values on the cropland soils are increasing, although they increased less this year, and it looks like in another year we might have some stability on those. Here is a couple of graphs that show you that. This graph here shows that the productivity value for range-rated soils in Pennington County dropped a little bit for 2014. That 25% increase limit doesn't affect our crop or our range-rated soils. We've already hit that level, and there's some stability here. Keep in mind that every parcel is a mixture of crop and range-rated soils. This is just the range-rated number. This is the crop-rated number. The graph here shows the productivity value for crop-rated soils in red and our assessment for crop-rated soils in blue. We have not reached the goal of that productivity value for crop-rated soils. You can see the red line, the impact that significant increases in crop prices did to assessments. When the productivity process started, here was the productivity number, here was our assessment. Crop prices went up in the last several years, so this increased quite a bit. Now, you can see right here is when the legislature changed from a 10% cap to a 25% cap. We were not too far away here, but with this increasing so much, that this happened all across the state, the legislature knew that at some point when this cap limit went away, there would be a major jump up. So right here is where we went from 10 to 25%. Now, we are right here, right now, we increased about 20% last year, or this year, on our crop-rated soils. We're not too far away. Next year, we'll have a smaller increase, and then maybe after that year, we'll be at that point, and we'll be able to stabilize. Again, this is the crop-rated soils, and there is no parcel that is entirely crop-rated soils. Every parcel is a mixture, and the range-rated soil actually dropped a little bit this year.
So how does your assessment compare on the range rated as to the productivity?
We're there. We have hit it.
So you're assessing
Somewhere
it?
back in here, we hit, maybe it was even back in here, we hit that limit, and now this is the productivity number and our assessment. We've met that. So productivity value that we got from the state last year dropped a little bit, so our assessment dropped a little bit. We've hit that point. So when we started this productivity process, our assessments were closer to the range number than what the crop value, than what we are on the crop value. This is a graph that'll show what's happened with our taxable factors. The factor for ag property, indicated in red here, has been 85% since the implementation of this productivity process. Because we have the number that the state tells us we should have on ag assessments, our factor has been 85%. Because we have that number that the state gives us, the assumption is that we are at 100% of market value on ag land, so our factor is 85%. The only reason that this might change is if we deviated from what the state tells us we should be on our ag assessment. If we did something funky with it, the state would adjust that factor. But we have that number, so we're at 85%. The factor for non-ag property here is in blue. It's decreased over the last few years as our level of assessment has increased. This is only 2013. Both of these numbers are expected to be the same next year. Go back to 1999. Here, both of our ag land and non-ag property assessments had a level of assessment near 85%, so our taxable value was 100% that year. Because our level of assessment was so low in this year, our taxable factor was 100%. Because our level of assessment has increased closer to 100%, we have come down with our taxable factor. The last thing I wanted to say is that we have Board of Equalization coming up. Next week, we start and then go for the next several weeks. I would like to request that all 5 commissioners sit on Board of Equalization. That is just a request from my office. It is your meeting. State law says I have to help you with your meeting. But if all 5 commissioners would show up for all of the days that we hold this, it would give our office better consistency when we look at what the board does and the decisions they make throughout the entire Board of Equalization process, and then what we do throughout the rest the next year in anticipation of next year's Board of Equalization. It would make things a lot easier for us if all 5 commissioners were there. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Would you describe what you call a mass appraisal? What's the process?
Mass appraisal. We have to assess property at market value. So we are doing an appraisal. We're required to follow the same standards of professional practice that any other appraiser has to follow, except that we are doing a mass appraisal. We are looking at an entire group of properties instead of just one property at a time. We gather information on that group of properties. The group of properties that we're doing is all of the taxable property in Pennington County. And over the last 100 years, we have gathered all of the property data on all of those properties. Of course, we go out and we add new property to the tax roll and the data for that. Then we look at sales that sell, where they sell and what sells, and we change our values based upon what is selling. We utilize a CAMA system, which is a computer-assisted mass appraisal software system that has all of that property data, all of the data on your home, when it was built, how big it is, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, basement, all of that data. We have that data on all properties, and when something sells, we know what is selling and what kinds of properties are selling, and we adjust our values based on those sales. We consider, and are required to by law, all three approaches to value: sales comparison, cost approach, and income approach. Our CAMA system does a sales comparison and a cost approach. The income approach is not applicable to most of the properties we have in Pennington County. We wind up doing that by hand, property by property.
So the group, as you call it, how is that selected? Is that selected by a computer?
The group of properties that we appraise is all of the taxable property in Pennington County. All the property in Pennington County is reassessed every year. Now, we will do a reappraisal project where we will go out and look property by property, all of those properties, but we select those neighborhoods that we do that every year depending on where we think the greatest need is. But all properties assessed every year.
If the market trends are such that the houses that are for sale are all in a certain price range or above a certain price range, and so you had a graph up there that showed that the sales were 199 or 190 something, and the $75,000 homes weren't selling. They were being held for rentals or whatever. Then I guess my question is, what is actually represented in terms of the demographics by your mass appraisal?
The average property sold last year was $199,000. Of course, there was a $1 million home that sold, and there was a $10,000 home that sold. And yeah, maybe this last year, most of the homes sold were $250,000 homes, and there were very few $50,000 homes. We look at sales by neighborhood. We have the entire county split up into somewhere around 90 to 100 neighborhoods. And we look at that median level of assessment and that COD per neighborhood. And we look at the sales that we have per neighborhood. So that the Department of Revenue really doesn't care about our accuracy other than countywide, but we do it by neighborhood. And we look at what's selling and our median level of assessment in each neighborhood.
Every year?
Every year.
How many neighborhoods do you have?
Guessing 90 to 100. Now, those neighborhoods, North Rapid, Chapel Valley, Rapid Valley, neighborhoods that you'd recognize, extreme eastern Pennington County, Robbinsdale. We've identified neighborhoods that are similar properties, similar demographic, similar market influences, and they'd be neighborhoods that anybody'd be familiar with.
Yes.
Back to the ag land assessments, the homes, the residences that are on those pieces of property, how do you look at those? Are they just lumped in with the ag?
The homes are non-ag property.
All right.
So they'll be assessed the same way as all other property in that neighborhood. Now, homes north of Wall have an assessment where we look for sales of homes in eastern Pennington County. An ag property just south of town will have, that home will be valued like all the other homes in whatever neighborhood that might be. The homes are non-ag property. They're assessed just like any other house.
Any other questions? You have anything further?
Nope, thank you.
Next item is item 12, Pennington County budget discussions. And item A is the budget preparation guidelines. Holly?
You've been provided updated figures from Auditor Pearson. She was unable to be here today to discuss this with you. At this time, I guess I would open it up for the board. If there's any scenarios that you want information put together on in preparation for the guidelines that you would give the department heads to create budgets. Chief Deputy KJ is here. She might be able to answer some of your questions for you. Julie did give you a couple of pieces of information on COLA merits. I guess it would be up to the board to decide what you want to discuss at this time. Julie will be back for your next meeting on the 15th.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I just don't understand. Last year, we had a levy of 5.21. I guess I'm looking at probably general fund, 5.21. We had 3.2%, you maybe better stay, Shannon, maybe that includes you. Percent of county growth, 3.2 million. Taxes available from growth, 1,114,000. Estimated levy with the growth, 5.27. How does the levy go up when we have more money to tax against? I don't understand that. So, because if I say I want to use the same levy as last year, we have less tax dollars in? How can that be? Because Shannon just got done saying that we've got growth and we've got, I don't know how many million in assessments that went up, and still the mill levy has to go up?
Part of it, Commissioner Buschrood, has to do with the amount that was applied to the budget last year.
Oh, we're going to use less money this year from reserves.
I don't know, I mean, there was a lot of numbers at the meeting 2 weeks ago, but that was one of the things that Julie kind of pointed out.
If I remember, she said something about we have less money. If we want to stay at 20%, we would have less money from reserves.
Correct.
Okay, that explains that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So we did hit the 20%, or did we decide to have a little less than that last year? Because that was part of the discussion. I didn't pull my book, I'm sorry.
No,
We stayed at 20.
right. That motion's never changed,
Okay.
the 20% reserve.
Basically what it is.
But that is the option.
Correct.
In answer to what Ron is saying.
Correct.
If he wanted, if you were interested in keeping it the same as last year, we could
Lower the reserves.
lower it to 18%.
Is that what it'd be, approximately 2%?
Well, and Auditor Pearson last year had said that we typically get down between the 3 and 5% range before that next influx of property taxes comes in from that reserve. Am I correct? We get down.
That's correct. And also remember that you have 3 years back.
We have
of-
CPI
Of CPI
saved.
that is saved.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So KJ, and I don't know, you can help me in this and maybe I can make it plain, but if we take money from the general fund reserve and put it into non-budgeted items, that will reduce the reserve, the percentage in the reserve. So we'll have to tax more to bring the reserve back up.
If you want to stick to that 20, yes.
So if we wait for the 2015 budget cycle and put the items that are requested now that aren't budgeted into the budget for 2015, how can we do that and keep our reserves the same, or in that 17 to 19% bracket, wherever it might be?
from a couple weeks ago when Julie was talking about that.
Don't be confused, because I am.
No, no. If you were to do it all for next year, it wouldn't make much difference because budgeting, I mean, whether you supplement it this year or budget next year, the money goes away. Her point was, as you budget over a number of years, if you were to be budgeting for those big projects or big purchases and continually keep it adding to that assigned fund balance that I refer to. When Julie talked to you 2 weeks ago, she had already extracted out everything the board has assigned. And I think she had it outlined for you. There's the bus reserve, some IT equipment, money for catastrophic purchases at Health and Human Services, Crisis Care Center. Those are the big, those two are the big ones. And you'll want to continue to grow those. Then you're not going back once every 5 or 7 years for a major purchase and needing to deplete your reserves. Your unassigned fund balance, because you're always growing other pieces and you include it right in your budget. We did it for a number of years with the equipment reserve, where inside of the budget you had $100,000 that was added to that reserve. We haven't added to that one for a couple years. Did the same thing with IT. And so if, in fact, you were to look at those kinds of purchases and begin to incorporate them into the budgeting process, not for just 2015, but for every year going forward, you're going to see less and less the types of requests that come from department heads for one-time large purchases, where they talked about major repairs to existing buildings and large vehicle purchases from both the sheriff's office and highway, major equipment purchases for IT and all the continual updates that we need for technology. So it would balance things out rather than, boom, we need this for this year and we haven't grown the money through the course of a number of budget years to get there. And that's going to equalize that 17 to 20% number that you want.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
to follow up with what KJ is saying, I am very interested in doing some of those reserves, but I believe that in the past we were sort of led to believe that too many reserves cause a problem to the public with how that is set up. We have too much money in reserve, and that affects their perception of what we are charging them in taxes. And so I kind of want to get that straight in my mind, because it seems like it's very good business sense to do some of the things that the sheriff and Julie were talking about, such as the income from the bus trips back and forth to the eastern part of the state, that we would take all or part of that money and put it in a reserve to purchase a new bus when we need to do that. I like that idea, but I also remember sitting through some hearings here before and being told, you can't have this many reserves, it doesn't look good. How are you explaining it to the public that you have all this money in reserve? And so I need to come to grips with how that really is.
And you know, I think part of that is a philosophy, and remember that statutorily in the general fund that you can't have more than the 40%, and many years ago, everything just went into the undesignated fund balance, and people, look at those numbers and wanted to see where they're at. So we began that process of accumulating the assigned reserves, and sometimes those needs change, and or maybe the need is still there, but there's a more important need that the board feels needs to be addressed. So I do think a lot of it has to do with philosophy. It used to be, you can only accumulate that money for so long. It used to be for 60 months. It's now up to 84 months. And so you kind of have to look at those factors too. But I believe that that Julie expressed to the board that her philosophies have changed over the years too, and it is. Part of it is that expenses are just so much more than they used to be. Our budget is so much more, and you don't talk about those kinds of major expenditures and try dumping them onto a one-year budget cycle, because it just doesn't work.
So, Mr. Chair, I guess what I would like to see this board consider is looking at some of that. I don't believe that we could do that all in 1 year of budgeting, but there are some things that perhaps we could begin to put in reserves, such as the one I just mentioned, that would make some good sense, and that we could put the county on maybe a more secure footing, and eventually we would be operating so that we were saving for future purchases that we know we are going to have to deal with. So I would hope that that would be a serious consideration in our budgeting process. And then I want to switch subjects with you, because I also, I'd like to see us get a better handle on the information that was given to us from Health and Human Services a couple of weeks ago, when we talked about the amount of money that is in those HHS areas. And one of the things that was indicated to us is that there is extra funding in crisis care and some of those other reserves that are handled through that department, and that we need to reassess that. Well, we really need that information to have a meaningful discussion here with budgeting, and I would really like to see that. And I'm not sure where that comes from, if we need to have Karen Romy come and visit with us, or if you can get that information and give it to us. But for us to really have a good handle on how we're going to go forward, it sounded to me like it was quite a bit of money, and we really need to know what that is.
I don't have the exact dollar amounts of the reserve, but I know that the crisis care is close to,
951.
I was going to say close to a million.
1,000, I'm sorry.
Right, it was close to a million. I think
Too many
I
zeros.
think that the Health and Human Service one is what, around 450?
And the assigned catastrophic is.
375.
Yeah, 300.
So as far as the analysis of how much is there and how much is needed, that would need to come from Karen Romy. Those have accrued over a number of years, and so in that same respect, as things change, perhaps there's some funding that are currently in those assignments that could be reallocated to others, or moved back into the unassigned fund balance.
Well, and the other part of it is it'll be great to know how much is extra in those funds, but it'll help us to know that we don't need to put so much away in our 2015 budget considerations. And I think that's a real important, I just think we need to know that information before we go too much forward.
Anything further?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just want to be known that I'm just absolutely in tune with the new philosophy of budgeting things for certain expenditures down the road and having a fund set up for those things. And I know that one of the items coming up is the drainage fee reserve. And I think that that should go back into a reserve for that, as we saw here a while back with the Hawthorne ditch issue. But I did take that tour of the jail the other day, and the sheriff and Mueller and others took me around and showed me what the problems were in the jail. And I'm a firm believer that there is problems over there. But I really believe that it ought to be shown in the budgets rather than asked for expenditure in the middle of the year. And that's what gets me, is because that if we I shouldn't say throw, but if we put $2 million or so as requested into remodels in the jail right now, that's going to drop our reserves down. So we're going to have to increase taxes to put that money back in reserves. And maybe we're going to have to increase taxes down the road someplace to keep our reserves at that 17 to 19% if we spend that $2 million for remodeling the jail. But I still think it ought to be a budget item rather than coming in the middle of the year and asking for it after we've already spent money that we thought we had available for wages and things on that order. Now we're getting requests in the middle of the year for doing buildings, and I don't think that's the right thing to do. The jail, I believe, has some areas that's in bad shape and need to be looked at with earnest. I don't remember exactly, maybe Don can tell me, but I think they make about, 2,000 meals a day out of that kitchen down there in that neighborhood. And it's not good. And the septic system, and the drainage and the sewage that's going out of that building is having big problems. And it goes right down through the major foundation of the jail, which you can't start cutting into, so we're going to have to find ways to move facilities to outside walls in order to get new sewage and water systems into them. So it's something we need to do.
Okay, anything further? Would, perhaps we have it, and I'm just not aware of it, but of all the reserves, the different reserves that we have, do we have an explanation of why they are reserves? When, why are we storing money? And if we don't have, then it would strike me that it might be a good annual exercise for this commission to review the reasons for accumulating money for any purpose and say, yes, we need to continue to do that, or no, we need to redirect something. Is that possible?
Yeah, I would, recommend that be like one of the first steps in the budget process. Julie kind of outlined that for you, actually, at the last meeting. She touched on what was in the general fund reserves, reminded you that the $521,000 on the South Dakota Municipal League is a required accounting figure that we put on. That's not spendable money for us at this point. Other than that, just a highlight for the board and remind to think of as you move towards the budgeting process, $375,000 for catastrophic health, which that reserve was established and began when we pulled out of that pool that we had participated in for many years. And I think that's been a good number of years ago, at least 8 or 10. I'm looking at you, Ron, because I'm thinking you kind of remember that one too. The IT equipment reserve is actually so small now with only $13,640 that probably the logical thing would be to just dissolve that or add to it, one or the other, depending on the recommendations from Russ Tinsvold. The equipment reserve will be down with the supplement that we'll be addressing and later on the agenda down to, I have 37,605.
IT one went
yeah.
away at the last meeting.
Oh, it did, okay. And then the large one, the Crisis Care Center at 951. The $100,000 financial reserve is for the software completion of the Springbrook implementation, which is being completed this year. And I expect all of that will be used. If there's any savings in budgets as we get towards the end of the year, we would of course close that out, because we're kind of, into the final stages of that one. And then then any that you add, such as if we bring back the drainage one that we closed about 5 years ago, so. But whatever budget year you're in, you're going to want to look at those and determine how much is there, how much do we still need to be there, how much more do we need to accumulate to add to it for whatever those purposes are.
Thank you. One other thing, the 1.4 cost of living factor, is that applied to our current budget so we can increase it 1.4, or do we apply it to the new growth and all that taxable value? Where does the 1.4 get applied?
It gets applied to the budgeted wages from this year when we apply the 1.4 to that, and that's where the estimated cost would be approximately $430,000.
So, Ollie, what do you need the board to address in terms of giving you guidance to keep us on schedule?
I've taken some notes. I gathered a couple of pieces of information that you guys want for next meeting. If there's anything else that you want to consider or want information on, now's the time. We can direct staff to put that information together. Otherwise, we'll be back at the next meeting with Auditor Pearson.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And I think you've mentioned it on these special reserves that we have. Not only would it be good for us to know why we're accumulating the money, but how much money we need in there, and is it a long-term or a short-term need? I know the sheriff has asked for a special reserve for a bus. Well, if he estimates he's going to buy a new bus every 5 or 6 years, then we could figure out, based upon what a cost of a bus is, how much money you need to put it in every year, rather than just taking a, because what it feels to me like has happened this year is that every bit of budget that somebody has left over and over-collected revenues, they want to capture all that up and put in a special reserve. And frankly, if we keep doing that, then you don't have money left over at the end of the year to start you out with your funds for the following year, and we'll have to increase our levy to be able to cover that. And so, whoever's responsible for each one of these special reserves, if they could put us a report together that says, here's why I need it, here's how much I need in there, and the justification for the need, and whether it's an ongoing need or a short-term need. If we're just going to do this for 2 years until they can buy whatever they need and then deplete that, we ought to know that.
Anything further? If not, does anyone have anything they want to say about the drainage fee reserve that has not already been said?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. We talked last meeting about setting up special reserves for different things that are going to be needed down the road a ways. And I think that's a fantastic idea, and that's exactly why I think I was involved in the motion way back when we first put that drainage money into a special reserve. And to have that available for drainage items. And Hawthorne Ditch, I don't remember exactly what that fee was. How much was that, Heine or KJ or Heine? Can you remember how much we?
To put the Hawthorne Ditch underground?
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was about between 2 and 3 million right now.
Yep. So.
And I was thinking about 500,000 over a 3-year period. We could we could do that. And I guess if you're serious about setting up a drainage fee, I can draft a resolution and get the numbers for you, what's been went into general from past years. And I can bring that at the next meeting if you'd like to formally look at a resolution to set up by code, it has to be done by resolution, so if you wanna do that, I will be more than happy to put something together for you.
Well, I'm a firm believer that we should have left that in the drainage fee, and we would have had the money to take care of the Hawthorne ditch deal when we had cleaned it here a while back, and we also would have a buildup of reserves to do that underground drainage ditch for the Hawthorne. It's money that was captured from building, or from not from building grounds, but from planning and zoning on the purchase of building permits, and that's what it was designed for, and then all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, it got taken out and put into the general fund. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
Mr. Chair, can I just clarify
Sure.
that, Ken? A few minutes ago, you heard me mention that we went through a time here where people were telling the board that we should not have those extra reserves. They didn't have a purpose. I think you remember that conversation, and that was why it was dissolved. However, I think that what we just talked about a little while ago, where we have a specific project that's important, that changes, that's one of those changes KJ talked about, because a few years ago, there wasn't a purpose, and we were just, it had sat there and nothing was done with it, and so that became part of that change, and now it looks like we need to do a change back. So it does, I agree with what you're saying. We do need to set it up and everything, but I just wanted to let you know there was that philosophy change this year from several years ago, so.
But I just in response to that, this was attempted back, I think, in about 2005, when I was on the commission before, to do away with that drainage fund. And we stood our ground on that and said, hey, we're going to have, at that time, Rapid City itself had $50 million. Now it's $150 million in drainage that they need to do. And so at that time, I think, it seems to me that we had about 25 million of drainage that we probably needed to do. And that's why we were kind of building that fund up. My philosophy about it is, if you're going to charge somebody for something on a building permit or any permit, it should be there in front of everybody. Let them know what you're charging them for and what you're going to use it for, and it should not go into the general fund, just like it was another tax. And so what we should have done, I think, instead of putting that money in the general fund, it should have been taken off the books and planning and zoning and not charged the people in the first place.
Yeah, there was argument about it.
And just to let you know, as Rapid Valley develops, we got curb and gutter and storm sewer. And this year, we just went out and inspected our storm sewer system. We have a little over 500 drop inlets. In other words, where the water drains off the street. Of those 500, half of them have 4 inches or more of gravel and silt in them. So we're gonna have to hire a contractor to vacuum and suck all that material out of there. That's the only way to get it out of a drop inlet. And we've heard an estimate of a little over $200 per drop inlet. So all of a sudden now I'm looking at a $40,000 cost just to clean up our storm sewer
So we can get them to drain.
drainage system. So, I mean, drainage is needed, and when the people pay that permit fee, that's part of the use of that drainage fee, is to go back and maintain and keep our storm sewer system clean.
So then you, as part of what we've requested, you are going to give us an idea of what these costs were, because you never presented that in the last discussion we had several years ago. And so now, what we're asking is, give us an idea of what needs to be done and what it's going to cost, and then that helps us. And I think that's great.
So you want that plus a draft resolution to look at then, is what is the intent of the board?
I think by consensus, we can give Heine some direction. Anyone object to him preparing the resolution?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's now 9:15,
10:15.
daylight saving time. Items from the auditor.
This is a notice for a budget supplement for 2014 jail budget in the amount of $521,000 from the assigned fund balance. $472,000 was previously at the end of 2013 in the assigned bus reserve. In addition to that, the $49,000 that is needed to complete this purchase. The bus is expected to be here sometime this summer, was posted to come from the equipment reserve. And that's where I referred to, once we do the supplement today for the $49,000 from the equipment reserve to add for the purchase of the bus, and the $40,000 for the CCADP electronic records project to the CCADP budget, will bring that equipment reserve down to $37,605, and will bring the bus reserve to zero.
Do you need separate motions for the separate amounts?
No, the motion can be pretty much the language there from to supplement the general fund jail budget in the amount of $521,000 from assigned fund balance, $472,000 from the bus reserve, $49,000 from the equipment reserve, and the general fund CCADP budget in the amount of $40,000 from the assigned equipment reserve.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Item 14.
Good morning. Mike Cool, Construction Project Manager for Buildings and Grounds. I'm here this morning to seek approval of some recommendations regarding our furniture package. The Building Committee's, one of their primary goals is to maximize the use of existing quality furniture. But of course, we're going to need new furniture for the building as well. In order to address this need, the county is working with ARC International to assess our existing furniture and to procure the new furniture. This procurement process that we're working through includes a pre-qualification phase, and then it'll be followed with a bidding phase. The purpose of the pre-qualification phase is to identify equal furniture products, refine the specifications, and limit vendors to those who can meet our requirements. We received pre-qualification submittals on March 12th. ARC International, who is the consultant we're working with through this process, has reviewed these and has made a recommendation. ARC International, I have shared these recommendations with the Building Committee. No concerns have been expressed from the committee members. So, as I indicated, I'm seeking approval of this recommendation from the board. I have asked Kelly from ARC International to attend this meeting to answer any questions that you may have. Just to run through their recommendation in broad terms, all the vendors that had submitted, there were 5 on the 12th, have been pre-qualified to bid based on the qualification criteria that was a part of that package. And they have also made some recommendations in regard to the equal furniture, or furniture that would be the equal to the basis of design furniture. The vendors that have been pre-qualified include Canfield Business Interiors, Dakota Business Center, Western Stationers, Evergreen Office Supply with Brown and Sanger, A&B Business with Knoll Office, and Parameter Design Group. And what I'm seeking is the Commission's approval for ARCS Internationals, which are outlined in their letter that was attached to my memo to you, and authorization to move forward with the bid phase of this project. And I can respond, or Kelly can respond to any questions you may have.
Yes.
Mike, will these bids be put out so that vendors can piecemeal their bid, or is it one complete package?
I'll let Kelly explain.
I'm Kelly Trouble. I'm the Director of Interiors for ARC International. I've been working with Mike Cool and the Building Committee to help put this package together. It would be our intent that each vendor be required to bid the package in its entirety, so that they would be required to provide desking, seating, a few storage requirements that we have. We wouldn't want to end up with a situation where we have one vendor that maybe didn't bid a portion of the package and try and compare their bid to somebody else who bid that portion but didn't bid a second portion. So each vendor would be required to supply all of the furnishings that are outlined within the bid package.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I just make a comment? I'd like to publicly thank ARC International and Kelly in particular. She has inventoried every piece of furniture we have and rated it and figured out where it goes in the new building. She has it completely mapped. So the furniture that we're moving over there, which is a great deal, is mapped out. It was a huge undertaking, but in the end, it's going to save us a great deal of money because we are not going to be buying furniture we don't need. If we've already got good furniture, we can take over. And I just appreciate that huge effort.
Thank you
And
very
I
much.
just want to thank you.
I have a question. When you said each firm will be required to bid the entire package, and then looking at subparagraph A on the first page of your letter, and it indicates that a certain company's product doesn't meet your requirements. How do you handle that?
We've been working with that company to determine if they have something in their package they've already submitted that would work in lieu of their initial submission, and they do. For example, we rejected what they submitted as a private office submittal, so that'd be freestanding furniture, so things like a freestanding desk or a freestanding credenza. They had also submitted a furniture system for their open office, so that would be like a workstation. But that system also offers freestanding options within it, and that would meet the requirements. So they do have an option to provide something for the private office section.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, Mike needs a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve the consultant's recommendations as outlined in the ARC International Inc. letter dated March 27th, 2014, and authorize the bidding phase of the administration building furniture package to be let.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Kelly. Next item is the items from the Healthcare Trust Board, procedure change for proposed changes to the benefit package. Nick?
Thank you. Good morning. Nick Strout, Human Resource Director and Vice Chair of the Pennington County Healthcare Trust Board. What we're coming to you today is ask that you recognize and accept a vote that the Pennington County Healthcare Trust Board took on our March 19th meeting to do two things. The first thing that we're looking for is to hold off on any changes to our benefit package for the calendar year 2014. Consider any changes during calendar year 2015 with the January 1st, 2016 date. The reason is with the change in our health care coverage and our dental coverage and our prescription coverage and all the flex coverage, KJ, Jessica, myself, and Stephanie McCoy are pretty overwhelmed with the changes right now. And they're starting to come in, proposals are starting to come in, and we just don't have the time necessarily to deal with them. The second piece of this is there was never really any procedure for how we consider vendor changes or benefit changes to our healthcare package or our benefit package, because prior to the creation of my department, there really wasn't anybody to go to. There was no central person. So now that my department's in place and becoming established, we wanted to create a procedure so the vendors coming in know who to present to, how to present, and benefit package changes can be considered appropriately. So that's the request that we're asking for today, so I'll stand for any questions.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Nick, I just want to clarify. What we're talking about is a new vendor coming in, not existing vendor.
Correct.
I just want to make sure.
An example would be is Aflac is our supplemental insurance providers. People will come to me and say, you know, we're a supplemental insurance provider too, and we want to get into Pennington County. We've never had a solid procedure on how that works. So that's the procedure that I want to come into. Does it come to me and I make the decision on my own and bring it to you? Does it go through the Healthcare Trust Board and we make a decision as a group and then it comes to you? You know, we've never had that conversation.
Yes.
Maybe the Healthcare Trust Board needs to get bring a motion before the board where we just give this responsibility to the Healthcare Trust Board. So that, I mean, that's really where it should be. Your board should be the ones deciding whether we're going to expand the program. Having commissioners make that decision seems a little out of place.
Sure. The procedure that I envision is that Jessica and I would be kind of the front line. People would come in, we would make that presentation to the Healthcare Trust Board, and then that decision would be made, but ultimately then it does have to come here for approval. The sheriff and I were talking, we could send out an RFP. The Healthcare Trust Board would decide who we like, but you know, I still feel that any changes to the benefit package would have to ultimately be made at this level. I don't envision this board hearing those proposals. I think all that should happen at the Healthcare Trust Board, but that's the procedure that we need, because we've never had that procedure. So if a vendor were to come in today and ask to speak to you and make a proposal right here, is that the route we want to go, or is it, you know, Jessica and I making that decision? You know, so we've never had that conversation. So that's what, at the Healthcare Trust Board, we decide on that. We bring that proposal to you during this year. You approve that, and then at least we have a procedure on what that looks like. But we just don't feel that between KJ and myself and Stephanie and Jessica that we're in the position right now to be listening to those and making those changes. We're still trying to work every day. It's KJ and I are working through.
And the employees, they've had lots of change.
Okay, anything further?
So to answer your question, Commissioner Hawley, that procedure would come to you, hopefully within the next month or two, and then you can approve the actual procedure for these vendors coming in.
Okay, so you're asking for a motion to, as you have it printed out.
What's in bold is how I wrote it, so. And that's coming from the Healthcare Trust Board at our March 19th meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion.
Yes.
To recognize and accept the vote of the Pennington County Healthcare Trust Board to not consider changes to our benefit package in 2014, but consider any possible changes in 2015 to take effect in 2016. Also to direct the Human Resource Department to come up with an acceptable procedure for considering new benefit products and/or vendors.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is item 17.
Number 16.
Items from the Highway Department, state contract.
Good morning. First item I have is a purchase of bulk diesel and gas products off the state contract. Their old contract expired March 31st, and we need to have another motion by the board authorizing the Highway Department to purchase bulk diesel and gas products from the state contract list,
That'd be my motion, Mr. Chair.
effective April 1st, 2014.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item B.
Next item is approval of the 5-year, we call it the master agreement. It's an agreement between Pennington County and the Black Hills National Forest. This master agreement basically has a list of all the roads that we can consider as projects in the future. Basically, the master agreement allows us to enter into any agreement or contract with the Black Hills National Forest to make repairs or aggregate or whatever else we need on the roads listed on Schedule A. This was all new 5 years ago, and it's time they want to renew the agreement and enter into a new one every 5 years. We've reviewed it. We've met with the Forest Service about 4 times now, and it's been tweaked and different language inserted, and the Highway Department is comfortable with it, and we would recommend approval and signature by the chairperson.
Mr. Chairman, based upon the recommendation by the Highway Superintendent, Heine Junge, I would make a motion to approve the Forest Service Master Cooperative Road Agreement.
Second.
Motion and a second.
And authorize chairperson.
And all, yeah. Goes with it.
Any further discussion? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Next is item 17A.
All right, in my continued quest to get some policies and procedures down and approved in writing, I've brought 3 of them in front of you today for consideration. The first one is the procedure that the board uses to complete department head annual evaluations. I guess to briefly describe it, elected officials are excluded from this policy. Otherwise, we have 2 different types of department heads, ones that are appointed and serve at the pleasure of the commission, others that serve at the pleasure of users boards. This policy is what we've used in the past. It simply sets forth the procedure in writing for everyone to understand. So I'll stand for any questions on that policy.
Do you need a motion to?
Yes, please, to approve.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would make a motion that we approve the policy and procedure for department head annual evaluations as submitted.
We have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item B.
Second one in front of you is for the public meeting packet. South Dakota Codified Law 127-1.16 requires that any printed material relating to an agenda item must be published on our website. If it's not, we are required to have a copy in this room at time of consideration. Jessica Love, our new assistant, has been amazing in getting our commission packets electronically now, so we are moving forward with that. We do post them on our website. However, I still feel it's appropriate that we have a paper packet in the room. This policy just sets forth what the public's expectations should be of our office in handling that public packet, as well as what our expectations are of the public.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question. So I noticed in here we'll have a packet here in the meeting room. And we're saying that we wouldn't be giving it to a member in the audience so that they can take it somewhere or whatever. Are you gonna, I guess I'm kind of curious how that would be handled. Are you just gonna like put it at the,
Right now, it's located at the end of the dais right here. I would like it to remain there. If anybody wants to use it, they can come up and sit and look.
Okay.
It's just kind of a liability protection so that we don't lose pieces out of that, so that it's available for all to view and have access to.
and it's a complete packet?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
okay.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion?
So, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we accept the proposed policy and procedure regarding the public meeting packet.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Final policy would be the technology resources used by the Board of Commissioners. As we move forward, we are moving towards paperless packets. Several of you have been gracious enough to test out tablets and laptops to use during commission meetings versus making paper packets. Our packets can range from 150 all the way up to 500 pages. It's a lot of time, and it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of resources for staff to make those packets. In each meeting, we make 10 packets. So this policy just sets forth some basics when it comes to using technology for the Board of Commissioners. We would like to move forward in utilizing laptops. I don't envision forcing anybody to use one if they don't want one. I mean, paper packets will always be available. This just sets forth some guidelines if a commissioner so chooses to utilize that.
Any comments or questions?
I'll make a motion to approve that technology usage policy.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just one, I'm using one today and I really like it.
And
I'm sitting over here trying to eyeball it too and keep up with it, so.
If this is what the board so chooses, I will put together some proposals, come back maybe a next meeting or two, if you want to direct me to purchase some laptops to move
I
forward
think
with.
this is actually dragging me into the 20th century.
21st.
Not in, yeah, no, I'm not that far yet.
You forgot where you were, huh?
No, I'm not into the 21st yet. but-
Well, and one thing for public notice for people, that I don't know if we've actually talked about this publicly, but there is now a QR code on the bottom of the paper printed agendas. If you have a smartphone, you can scan that little code and you can pull up the pieces of paper that you guys are looking at for consideration. So we're moving forward. We want to increase that transparency, and this is one of the tools we have to do that with.
Any further questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item is item 18, changes to the Rapid City Draft Comprehensive Plan. That's it.
Good morning.
Good morning, Patsy.
Patsy Horton, Community Planning and Development Services with the city. You had requested an update on the changes that are proposed for our Rapid City Comprehensive Plan between January and March edition. And before you is a summary of some of those changes. I'm not going to go through all 7 pages, but I'm just going to highlight a few. With this particular change, we updated our Tier 1 boundary, which is our utility services boundary, and now we're calling it the urban services boundary. It's a little smaller. It's where Public Works really envisions where the city can provide utility services. So that's a huge change. We've also added some new policies for community partnerships based on feedback. We've strengthened some of the references to the economic impact of the airport and the Civic Center. I'm just going through a couple highlights. We've added some supporting policies. We've revised, again, the Tier 1 boundary to the urban services boundary. We have added some reference to the state law regarding the cement plant when it was sold. That particular property is zoned according to state law, not according to the mining and extraction category. So we threw that reference in so that there was no question about how the cement plant is zoned. We've added lots of things to the implementation section, and if you haven't looked, our plan is out at www.planrapidcity.com. Chapter 12 is the implementation section. There are 21 items that we need to do immediately as soon as it's adopted. Then we have 0 to 2 year near-term actions, we have intermediate actions, and then we have long-term. So kind of spells out what we need to do the next 5 to 10 years. Any questions?
So final adoption of this happens when?
We anticipate taking it to the Planning Commission on the 10th of April, and it will go to Legal and Finance the week after that. Council is scheduled for that Monday, which is, I believe, the 21st.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
So Patsy, in working with the company who's helped you through this, your experience, I mean, I know it's probably you feel like you need to be positive, but how has this really helped you get through it by going with a company consulting?
You know, I think they've done an awesome job. We've done several public input sessions, which is critical to, creating a plan for your community. They've formulated it in a way where there's goals and objectives for each different category. I think it's been an extremely beneficial process for the community.
Okay, we've had some informal or limited discussion about updating the county's comprehensive plan. And probably we'll have more discussion. In going through this, I picked out several things. On page 83, 3.1C, elected official training, which I thought might be worthy of, not that we would interfere with your training, but I think we might look at that. On page 114, there's a reference to ag land that would be worthy of some consideration. 186, the strategy for urbanization, and 187 is enclave annexation, which I guess that triggers the question of, okay, if the city's going to supervise the platting of land in the 3-mile limit, I have suggested that anytime there's development that it ought to be annexed to avoid a big sky deal. And do you, Patsy, have any recommendation on how the county and city should proceed to work out some of the details of that kind of thing?
I think in the plan, there is some reference to working on a consolidated committee to talk about those issues. And we would be happy to have you guys participate.
Okay. And then on 191 is the entryway implementation plan, which would involve our highway folks. Page 207 are on ECA 10 are TIF refinements that should be of interest. And 217 economic financing mechanisms, TIFs and tax increment districts and criterias, and 218 as well. So in this whole mix of things, it suggests to me that there's a need for some kind of interface between your office and our office.
Exactly. And as soon as we start moving forward with some of those action items, we would be happy to include Dan and any of you folks as you so choose.
Would there be some recommended procedure for formalizing that so that we didn't just do it whenever we thought of it?
If you guys are interested in some sort of annexation agreement, we'd be happy to start putting something together.
Any other questions or comments?
That's a good idea.
Dan, do you have anything you want to say?
Just so you know, we have received a bid from Clarion, who did their comprehensive plan, and we'll be reviewing that and presenting that to you.
Thank you. Anything else you wish to share with us, Patsy?
You're always welcome to send me a note, and, if you have any concerns about anything that we're doing, we'll try to get that addressed as soon as possible.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Okay, let's see. Planning and zoning.
Mr. Chair, how about a 10-minute break?
Well, can we get enough votes to pass it?
I don't know.
All in favor?
Aye. I think it passed.
Okay, Dan, you're on.
Morning, Dan Jennison, Pennington County Planning Director. First, need a motion to go into Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, I make a motion to go into Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Motion is second to convene as the Board of Adjustment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item A is a variance request 1401 to reduce the minimum required lot size from 40 acres to 11 acres in a general ag district. The applicant is Larry Shorb. It's located at 14220 Murphy Road, approximately 1/10 of a mile east of the intersection of Murphy Road and Shorb Road, and 2.5 miles northwest of the town of Hermosa. The purpose of this request is so that the rear lot line is currently close to the existing house, and reconfiguration will better match the current use of the property. The applicant, Larry Shorb, wishes to create Lot 1 of John Deere subdivision by reconfiguring the lot lines owned by Clifford and Mary Shorb, his parents. The lot line reconfiguration is the only change. Density and lot size will not. On March 24th, the Planning Commission heard the minor plat for this property and voted unanimously to approve with 7 conditions. The existing lot was created in 1944, currently zoned General Ag District. Contains the single-family residence and a detached garage, on-site wastewater treatment system. The other property is a larger tract of land owned by Clifford and Mary Shorb, currently consists of 305.42 acres. Strict application of the zoning ordinance would require the lot size to be 40 acres, as the property is zoned general ag. Clifford and Mary Shorb could allow Larry Shorb additional land. However, he's just changing the lot size right now. He could get additional land from the parents. The proposed lot size and shape is consistent with the existing land use in the area. The option also exists to rezone the property to a limited ag district, which would allow for 10-acre lots or larger. But he has no intent of further subdividing this property and would like to keep it as is with the change in the property lines. Contiguous land within Pennington County is within 3 miles, is all zone general ag. There have been 5 other variances that have been approved since '95 to allow for smaller lots. You can see a 0.32 acre, 0.49 acre lot, a 5 acre lot, an 8 acre lot, and a 10 acre lot. That was just done recently in 2007. So Staff is just indicating that if you approve the variance request, we do not have any additional conditions that would need to be attached.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve the variance VA 14-01 as asked for by the applicant, Larry Shorb, with no conditions as stated by the planning department.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to come out of the Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn as the Board of Adjustment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Consent agenda.
The Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine planning and zoning items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and a vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of the board member or a citizen. The consent agenda for planning and zoning contains the following items. Item B is a minor plat, 1405, Larry Shorb, Clifford and Mary Shorb, and John Preston as the agent. Approval is recommended. Item C is a second reading of a major planned unit development amendment, 1401, for Granite Point LLC, Gene Quinn as the agent, and approval is recommended. Item D is a vacation of plat, 1401, for Robert Chrisman and Faith Lewis, and approval is recommended. In subdivision regulation variance 1402 for John and Jenny Boland, and approval is recommended with waivers.
Does anyone wish any of the items on the consent agenda removed? If not, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Item F.
Good morning, Brittany Molitor, Water Protection Coordinator. Item F is the Spring Creek Advisory Group recommendations. On March 17, 2014, the Spring Creek Watershed Management and Project Implementation Plan Advisory Group made 3 recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners. These recommendations can be presented today but cannot be acted on until the next meeting. The first recommendation was that the Pennington County Board of Commissioners approves 2 on-site wastewater treatment applications, SPC 2013 PC 96 and SPC 2012 PC 89, and allows the applications that are not funded to remain pending and to be considered with the next round of applications. The second recommendation was that Pennington County sends a direct mailing to property owners located within the watershed requesting cost share application and allows 4 weeks for responses. And number 3 is that the Pennington County Board of Commissioners approves the 2014 Spring Creek Watershed Management and Project Implementation Plan Segment 2, Water Quality Monitoring Plan.
So the motion you're looking for is the recognition of the 3 recommendations from the March 17, 2014 Spring Creek Watershed Management and Project Implementation Plan Advisory Group?
Yes.
That would be my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is just, if you look at your requested motion in here, you say approve 2 riparian applications, but it looks like it's really on-site wastewater.
Okay, I will change that. Thank you.
Is that a correction that needs to be noted? Okay. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. There being no further discussion, does anyone else wish to comment? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Items from the chair, I think I probably said all I had to say about the city comprehensive plan. And so we can go forward with committee reports.
I don't have anything today, Mr. Chair, that needs to come up.
I don't have anything. I planned on going to Pier today for the meeting tomorrow, and I have a Board of Directors meeting tomorrow night. at 5:30. I think I will wait until tomorrow to see if I'm going or not.
Mr. Chair, just to go along with that, the gentleman that's the president of the South Dakota Chamber of Commerce, was Dave Owen, supposed to be here this morning and give a briefing to the governmental affairs meeting, and I guess he got snowed in someplace between here and Sioux Falls.
Commissioner Holloway, do you wish to brag about anything that you did on your trip? Welcome
Just
back.
kept quiet, I think.
Nancy?
I have a couple of things. Of course, I'm the woman on this group. I have to talk, right? First of all, I've been the designated person on the Planning Commission this month, and we had mentioned vacation home rentals in our own meeting, the first meeting, I believe, in March, and we voted to not do anything, not to consider it. However, we were kind of given the impression there hadn't been any issues with it. However, it came forward in the Planning and Zoning meeting last Monday that there are some issues. And so the Planning and Zoning Commission asked that this be gathered up and be presented to P&Z, and then they'll decide whether it should go forward. But we had not, none of us were aware of that. That specific question had been asked, and we were told, no, there hadn't been a problem. So we are going to see a report on that again, just to give everybody a heads up. I went to a community health board meeting on Thursday, and they had some pictures of the proposed building that we're talking about putting or joining in building with the with Health and Human Services and Community Health being in the same building. They are conscientiously pulling back on expenses, and I felt really good about that. I know last time we talked about adding some extra money on there, but I feel like they're still paring it back. And I appreciate that effort. The other thing I want to say is that they are looking at those tax market credits. That is looking good. And of course, if they are able to get that for the project, it will ultimately benefit us too. So just to bring you an update on those kind of major things.
Anything further? Not, next item is items from the public. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to address the commission?
Good morning, Dan Richer. Mr. Chairman, the only thing I'd like to bring up at this time is in the minutes for the Spring Creek Advisory Group. They got me down on, with quotes around my statement. And the statement's incorrect. And you guys were there, so.
So, okay.
That's, at this time, that's the only thing I want to say. There was this is quoted as me saying this with quotation marks around it. I did not say that. I'd like to see if you can talk somebody got that removed. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Good morning, I'm George Farabee, and I second Dan's motion. That was incorrectly quoted. Not only the government has any right to use the minutes from citizens in a way that's clearly, in this case, biased. Now, you elected officials, hired and elected bureaucrats, obviously, you have an obligation, or let me back up and say, you no longer have the privilege of saying you don't want to be in the minutes. The privilege you have is to step down from either being a hired or appointed or elected bureaucrat. Those of us citizens, unless we choose to be in the minutes, should not be in the minutes, period. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else from the public who wishes to comment?
I don't know where you come up with that.
Mark, I just had a quick question on you mentioned the vacation rental.
State your name, please.
Oh, sorry, Brian Fanestein. The timing on that report.
You know, I'm not sure, but I'm sure within a month. That's really in planning and zoning, but
Okay, yeah, because I just, the way the current ordinance reads, you know, it's blanket. And it definitely, you know, to allow conditional use permits, I think needs to be blended in there a little bit clearer for some opportunities, so.
I'm sure that once that's presented, there'll be a lot of opportunity for public comment.
Okay, very good, thanks.
Anyone else from the public who wishes to address the commission? If not, next item is executive session. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to convene in executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.